start off with acid rain. So acid rain consists of gases like sulfur dioxide and nitrogen oxide. And these gases react in the atmosphere with water and with oxygen and other chemicals to form different acidic compounds. And then these compounds can travel sometimes hundreds of miles with wind patterns. But when the winds carry these gases to other places, they can dissolve when there is rainwater form, precipitation. And when they dissolve into the rainwater, that's when we get the liquid or acid rain. And the acid rain can kill plant life, it pollutes rivers and streams. You can see the effects of it eroding stonework, any place where you see a lot of urban development. For example, if you travel in Europe and see cities have a long time been close to stonework that has been there a long time, and you see the effects of the acid erosion on the statues and old buildings that are present there. Roots become damaged from the acidic rainfall. The growth of the plant can be stunted. Nutrients in the soil can be contaminated, limiting the resources for the plants to take in. And the way that a plant itself directly is harmed is the waxy layer or the cuticle actually gets reduced by the acidic compounds. So as a result of that, if we have our producers being harmed, then other populations in that food web are going to feel the effects of that. Okay, so next, global warming. So the next big concept about human impact has to do with global warming. So there is an average increase in the Earth's temperature that's causing a change in the overall climate. And what that results in is a change in the patterns of rainfall, which can affect the level of the sea and affect plants, wildlife, and humans. So all living organisms are affected by global warming. And we're actually going to we have a poll goal to complete on Tuesday on global warming. That will be very quick, but it shows some of the statistics involved in this concept. The next concept is ozone depletion. So first of all, ozone layer is a form of oxygen gas that makes up a layer of the stratosphere, and its job is to filter out UV radiation from the sun. So those wavelengths of radiation from the sun that are particularly harmful to life actually are filtered out by the ozone molecules. But unfortunately, the production and emission of chlorofluorocarbons, or CFCs, is causing there to be a depletion and actual holes in the ozone layer. A chlorine atom is removed from a CFC molecule, and when it does that, it then attracts one of the 3 oxygen atoms in the ozone, in the ozone molecule. So there's a chemical reaction actually occurring between the chlorofluorocarbon and oxygen molecules in ozone. The CFCs come from cooling systems, fire extinguishers, styrofoam containers, which is kind of surprising, old home insulation, plastic foam, the throwaway food containers that are foam-like, from even hairspray, the aerosols that we use in daily grooming, all release these chlorofluorocarbons. And as they're released, they go up into the atmosphere where this chemical reaction can be occurring. This is a picture showing the overall ozone around the globe. And you can see where it's actually high, you have these red spots. But where we have ozone missing are these dark spots. So there are actual holes in the ozone layers, and so that's not just a myth or something that's an exaggeration that's been described. It's something that actually is occurring. This is just a picture or a graphic showing that chemical reaction I was describing. So the ultraviolet radiation strikes this fluorocarbon and releases one of the chlorine molecules, which then attacks the ozone, the 3 oxygen molecule, and steals one of the oxygens away. So that free atom of oxygen um, actually is causing there to be a depletion of this triple molecule of oxygen or ozone. Okay, so another concept, second to last one, is biomagnification. So biomagnification you should have touched on in introductory biology, but the definition is an increase in the concentration of a substance as it's passing through the different trophic levels. So it occurs throughout a food chain, not just within one organism. Biomagnification is the actual process of a substance actually becoming more concentrated as it moves along. The chemical, it has to be something that's long-lived. It has to be mobile so that it can be passed on. Um, Most often it's soluble in fat, so that's where it gets stored in the organism. And it's biologically active, which means it's going to react within the body to cause problems. So, for example, the idea behind this for using mercury as an example of one of those chemicals, it fits all of these characteristics. So when mercury occurs somewhere in the food chain, so for example, it's been found in fish. So fish eat the mercury, and the mercury then gets passed on to the next level of fish that eats the small fish that has the mercury in it. Um, because that predator fish has to eat a lot of small fish, it ends up getting a multiplied amount of the mercury. And then the predator fish now has a higher concentration of mercury, so that now if a mammal comes along, let's say a killer whale comes along and eats this predator fish, that killer whale, because it's a higher level consumer, has to eat a lot of the predator fish. And because of that, it's getting a multiplied amount of the more concentrated mercury. So then the concentration of mercury within that mammal has been magnified. So that's the idea of biomagnification. The impact is that there are some chemicals like mercury or DDT that really harm organisms. And organisms higher on the food chain are absorbing more toxins because they have to eat more. So usually it's the top predator that's the most affected, like the bald eagle or the polar bear. And also humans, because we are top predators, can be the victims of biomagnification. So our last concept of human impact on ecosystems, and as you can see, we're really looking at the harmful impact of human life on ecosystems, is overexploitation. And I have a really good film. I hope I'll have a chance at some point to show you about an example of this overexploitation. But essentially, what that means is excessive hunting or fishing of a specific species that causes that population to decline. And as we know, after going through all of these different levels of organization in an ecosystem, we can see that if we actually harm one particular population, that's going to have a magnified effect as the interactions between that species and all the others within its community and within the ecosystem can have a devastating effect on an ecosystem. Um, there are many examples of this. And again, I have this film that talks about how there's a pristine ecosystem in the Arctic that has experienced this overexploitation of one species of fish, and how that totally has caused the toppling of that ecosystem. Overexploitation of the species causes loss of genetic diversity, loss of the relative species abundance in the ecosystem, and if it happens to be a dominant species or a keystone species, it can actually cause the demise of an ecosystem. So I believe that is all that we are going to cover here. Make sure that you look through your chapters. It's 56.1 and 56.4 to just get a little bit more information on these different concepts, know some examples of each, and understand the difference between them, because some of them sound very similar. And hopefully this is helpful, and good luck with your studying.